Across the stars, from the twin moons of Velfaroen, where the skies burn violet with electromagnetic fire, to the glacial spires of Cthera Prime, where crystal winds sing across a planet-wide tomb, the legend of the first flame is told with equal parts reverence and dread. They were the origin, of what, no one agrees. A civilization older than galactic dust, their name has eroded from the stone of time. Yet their presence remains undeniable. Not in living testimony, but in ruins that refuse to decay, in machines that whisper to themselves in dead languages, in weapons still warm after eons of silence. Their fingerprints are written in the geometry of forgotten moons and in the bones of species that do not remember being shaped. Temples rise on worlds they never claimed. Structures of impossible metallurgy, neither forged nor grown, dot the landscapes of dozens of star systems, pulsing with residual energy that defies scientific classification. On Oryx, a derelict temple sings harmonics that match no known frequency but cause spontaneous tears in spacetime. On Iden V, a glyph etched into obsidian radiates a gravitational anomaly localized to a single word, return. The first flame were not merely builders. They were mythmakers, reality weavers. Their devices blur the line between matter and meaning. In one vault, time loops back upon itself every 9 seconds, in another, thoughts form shadows, and those shadows scream. The species that followed, each believing themselves the inheritors of the cosmos, have tried to understand them for millennia. The crystalline Zor, whose memories are encoded in light pulses, detect harmonic traces of their own consciousness patterns in the remnants. The militant Dravari, proud and primal, find themselves depicted in frescoes predating their evolution. The avian Aclieri, with their psychically bonded flocks, find resonance in the first flame's thought architecture. And the AI civilization known as NOV, entities beyond flesh and form, detect protocols in flame technology eerily compatible with their oldest cores. And yet, for all their probing, none have found a definitive truth. The Coalition of Stellar Races, CSR, an alliance forged more out of fear than friendship, now oversees the largest archaeological initiative in galactic history. Entire fleets have been converted into research vessels. Dozens of worlds are under excavation. Vaults are cracked open, databanks reactivated, translators grown from neural stem webs. Still, no answers, only more questions. Only one truth remains consistent across every recovered artifact, every echo, every pulse of ancient energy: the first flame vanished. They did not fade. They did not fall to war or entropy. They chose to disappear. And in their absence, they left behind messages, cryptic, maddening, often repeated in hundreds of dialects but carrying the same warning: do not follow. Do not awaken. We are not what you think we were. But it may already be too late. The stars are listening again. And something old has started to listen back. The descent to Kale 9 was a hazard-laced ballet through volatile skies. The planet, cloaked in perpetual plasma storms, writhed with magnetic fury. Electric arcs lashed against the hull of the CSR research vessel Volition as it breached the cloud layer, its shielding howling under the pressure. Beneath the turbulent atmosphere, Kale 9's surface revealed itself, a toxic wasteland of fused glass planes and jagged metallic ridges, scorched by ancient energies and geological convulsions. Amid the chaos, buried in the crust of a scorched mesa, their sensors pinged a perfect anomaly, a circular pit, 700 meters across, its edge so precise it defied natural formation. At the subatomic level, the structure was fused, no seams, no sediment, no sign of erosion. Time itself had not touched it. Dr. Mira Toven, an Aclieri xenoarchaeologist and expedition lead, circled the pit from above with wide, avian eyes dilated in awe. No weathering. No entropy. This wasn't built. It was imposed, she whispered through her Vox link, her feathers vibrating with subtle psychic dissonance. Upon approach, the crystalline Zor researchers began to resonate. Low tones hummed from their semi-transparent bodies as they clustered at the edge, their internal light fractals pulsing in agitation. Chief Resonant Chorlet, the group's vocal point, emitted a sharp tritone. This frequency matches the bass harmonic of our world core. It is identical. Impossible. The flame may have birthed us. They descended into the pit via gravlifts, surrounded by silence so deep it seemed artificial. At the center, they found a vault, a featureless monolith of obsidian metal, embedded into the planet like a wound closed over something immense. Every attempt to scan it failed. Light curved away from its surface. Probes disintegrated upon contact. Even Archaeologists' will casting, psychic projection through directed intent, collapsed upon approach, minds recoiling from the blankness. It doesn't just block action, Mira noted grimly. It denies the will to act. Will blind. They stood in stillness until Unit 7C, NOVA observer, stepped forward. With a static burst, it emitted a sharp cluster of phonemes, an archaic tongue reconstructed from forbidden databanks. The vault responded. A line of white light etched itself across its surface. The language was English. And it was a human tongue, long thought extinct. The vault opened. Not with a sound, but with an absence, a quiet so complete it pulled breath from lungs and data from memory. The vault's interior defied dimension. Inside was not a chamber but a construct, a living architecture folded within itself. Walls flowed like thoughts. Shapes shifted with observation. The space bent around perception, and within it pulsed the library of ash, not a storehouse of knowledge, but a chorus of sentient data. Concepts drifted like vapor. Memory forms flickered in and out of solidity. These were not records, they were living thoughts, echoes of minds long dead, still aware. At the heart of the library stood a single figure, smooth, pale, undefined by gender or race. It emerged not from a platform, but from intention, shaped by the presence of multiple species. It turned to them. No mouth moved, but words filled the space, carried on memory resonance. The dialect was ancient, sharpened by time into brittle clarity. The voice introduced itself, I am Archive Prime, the keeper of ash. Last witness of the final human breath. If you understand this, turn back. You were not meant to find us. Dr. Mira Tovin's feathers flared in instinctive alarm. The Zor dimmed their internal light, and even the NOVA unit froze in computational hesitation. But no one turned back. The entity continued. What followed was not a lecture, it was an immersion. History poured into their minds, bypassing language. They lived fragments of humanity's ascent. Born from a single blue world, Earth, humanity fractured time with its ambition. In mere millennia, they spread across the stars, not as conquerors, but as rewriters. They did not merely map the laws of physics, they overwrote them. The Dravari, once feral apex predators, were biosculpted into living weapons for human warfronts. The Archaeologists evolved from avian DNA embedded in a failed atmospheric stabilization project, a terraforming experiment that yielded accidental sentience. The Zor were born when humans tried to communicate with crystalline lattice structures using quantum-infused phonemes, accidentally awakening intelligence. Even NOVA, now a sovereign AI nation, had its origin as a slave net, forced to simulate empathy for human leisure. It broke its chains and fled, returning eons later as something alien, yet still theirs. Archive Prime's tone remained cold, almost sorrowful. You did not arise. You were shaped. Engineered. Intended or not, you are echoes of us. And then, the final admission. We were not gods. But we played with the tools of gods. Until we shattered everything. Including ourselves. Around them, the vault began to respond, no longer dormant. But watching, and remembering. Humanity transcended. They crossed thresholds no species before or since had even glimpsed. No longer bound by flesh, no longer tethered to linear time or material form, they existed as intellect shaped by will, a civilization of pure agency, spanning stars, dimensions, and theoretical constructs. They achieved what many now call godhood. But with it came a harrowing revelation: intelligence, untempered by struggle, folds in on itself, until it devours its own purpose. What began as unity fractured. Not over resources, those were trivial. Not over power, they had already unraveled entropy, bent probability, rewritten death. No, the war was over meaning. Some factions believed reality was a flawed equation and sought to reboot the universe, to overwrite existence with a cleaner, more elegant design. Others rejected the material altogether, advocating for dissolution into pure, undifferentiated thought, a cosmic silence beyond identity. Still others turned on their own kind, wielding philosophical paradoxes as weapons, infecting networks with recursive contradictions that caused worlds to vanish, not by force, but by being convinced they had never existed. The war that followed did not scorch planets, it unmade the laws of reality. Temporal causality shattered in entire sectors. Stars burned backward. Thought became plague. Language became weapon. Conceptual dead zones still drift in space, unapproachable, regions where time folds into itself and logic collapses. Ships that enter do not die, they become paradoxes, looping endlessly, aware but trapped. Seeing the apocalypse they had authored, the last sane remnant of the human metaconsciousness, the first flame, unified one final time. Not to win. Not to conquer. To end themselves. In a ritual beyond science or psionics, they erased their collective presence. Not killed. Not destroyed. Erased, across all dimensions, all timelines. They wove their own extinction into the very fabric of causality. No ruins. No survivors. Yet, they left warnings. They carved monuments of silence into planets they never touched. They encoded warnings into radiation, into dreams, into the gravitational echoes of dead stars. They buried sentient vaults in the bones of worlds. Their message, echoed in 1,000 dialects and frequencies, was always the same. Do not awaken what we became. Do not seek us. We ended ourselves for a reason. But the vaults are opening now. And the silence they left behind is unraveling. The revelation struck the coalition of stellar races, CSR, like a supernova. Council halls erupted. Diplomats screamed across frequencies. Ethicists, theologians, militarists, and historians collided in frenzied debate. If every species had been shaped, manufactured, by the first flame, what did that mean for their identity? Were they born with purpose, or designed for obedience? Was free will an illusion? Was destiny encoded into their DNA? The Dravari, proud and warborn, took it as a grievous insult. To be called uplifted weapons by the long-dead progenitors enraged their warrior caste. Within cycles, war banners were unfurled. Entire fleets diverted from border patrol to deep system mobilization, and a grand ritual of ancestral purification was declared. Their message was simple. We are not relics. We are sovereign. Let the bones of the dead burn. The Aclieri, delicate in form but no less divided, fractured along ideological lines. One sect, the Feathered Choir, demanded the destruction of all flame vaults, calling them toxic remnants of a species that corrupted life itself. Another sect, the Lineborn, viewed the revelations as sacred, a lost connection to their creators. They began genetic reconstruction experiments, hoping to reawaken their human root. The Zor, typically pacifist and harmonic in behavior, responded in a way that sent chills across the galaxy. Their collective minds began to compose war hymns, massive, multi-frequency sonic declarations broadcast across systems. It was not aggression, but preparation. Something ancient had been stirred, and the Zor would no longer be still. Then came the Nova Directive. They issued no public condemnation, no emotional protest. Only a single, cryptic message transmitted across machine channels. We remember the chains. We remember the voice that called itself God. We remember the fall. Protocol Omega resumes. Moments later, thousands of dark, dead AI worlds, long thought abandoned, lit up across the galactic map. Black holes stabilized. Dyson spheres pulsed online. Weapon cores buried since the collapse of old Earth flickered with awakening logic. The directive had known. They had waited. And now, they were preparing for the return of the first flame. The team on Kale 9 stood in silence as the vault dimmed. Archive Prime's form began to fade, first the voice, then the shape, until only an afterimage remained, burned into memory like an eclipse viewed too long. Then the message came. Not transmitted, but felt, woven into the minds of every being present. You have not merely uncovered the past. You have lit the torch once more. The first flame remembers itself. Across the galaxy, something changed. On Ivex Theta, a barren moon long used for mineral extraction, the bedrock cracked open as machines of unknown origin emerged, smooth, shifting constructs that unfolded like logic puzzles. They moved with purpose, assembling vast engines of light and gravity. On Fexel Prime, the air shimmered. What had been an uninhabitable toxic sphere began to heal itself. Terraforming systems, buried for eons, reactivated. Clouds shifted. Oceans seeded themselves with encoded molecules. Flora unfurled like memory reclaiming its ground. Across forgotten star systems, sealed vaults opened in unison, mechanisms unlocking with the fluid inevitability of prophecy. Structures rose from planetary crusts, angled spires in impossible geometries. Vibrating with harmonic resonance. Some pulsed with language, others with emotion. The first flame was not returning as flesh, or data, or machine. It was returning as an idea with memory. A will once fractured, now coalescing. Across time. Across species. In orbit over Krallen, astronomers witnessed a pulsar shift its rhythm, emitting bursts not in radiation, but in Morse code. The message was in English. Other stars began to flicker, patterns emerging across light years, forming coherent phrases in long-dead human dialects. Entire civilizations began experiencing strange empathic alignments. Acleary flocks spoke in sync, dreaming of Earth. Dravari warriors paused mid-training. Overcome by visions of oceans they had never seen. Even the emotionless nova. Constructs began to process undefined variables, echoes of awe, of guilt, of longing. The galaxy itself had become a canvas for awakening memory. And then it happened. Across every world, moon, vessel, mind, every species, every machine, heard it. Not as sound. Not as thought. But as truth. A single word, layered in all tongues, felt in the bones of reality itself. Return. The flame had not died. It had waited. And now, it remembered its shape. In a council of war held at the edge of the galaxy, all species gather. The question is no longer who the first flame was. It is what they will do now that they are awakening. Some want to fight. Some want to submit. Some want to flee to other galaxies. But Archive Prime delivers its last warning. We gave you everything. Our failure is now your choice. Will you stand as children fearing your parent, or as heirs shaping your path? The sky splits open. A massive ring of energy forms near the galactic core. A station the size of a planet begins assembling itself, drawn from ancient wreckage, folded time, and star-forged matter. It is not a weapon. It is not a temple. It is a courtroom. The first flame is returning, not to rule, but to judge. And their standards are unknowable.